Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the latest episode of An American in Thailand, airing every Friday. This program is broadcast from Ratchamakhan University of Technology, Peranakan. This program will come to you in two parts. For the first part, I will introduce a certain topic about being an American here living in Thailand. It could be about food, travel, culture, anything like that. It could be anything. We'll then take a break, and in the second part of our program, we'll get into more examples and specifics of the topic that we're talking about. All right, let's get on to the show. Welcome, everyone. My name is Gary Gray, and I am your host for An American in Thailand. I'm an American English teacher here at Ratchamakhan University of Technology, Peranakan, and I have been teaching here as of this recording for about 8.5 years. We have just finished up our semester here, so I'm now at 8.5 years. We're halfway through our year, going into our second semester in a month as of this recording. So I've been here for 8.5 years. So that is long enough that I think I have some pretty good idea of the differences between the United States and Thailand. And by the way, I explain this sometimes. I'll just explain it briefly today because I've explained it a lot in recent episodes. When I say an American, I mean from the United States. Some people from other parts of the Americas, like Canada, Mexico, South America, they may get upset when people from the U.S. call themselves Americans. I'm sorry. I'm not saying that to offend anyone. We have no other term for it. We don't call ourselves United States people. That's not, we don't have any other term. And the full name of our country is United States of America. So American is really just short for that. So when I call myself an American, I don't mean to offend anyone that's from other parts of the Americas. It's just what we're called. That's what we are. Sorry. If you're from the United States, you're called an American. Sorry, that's what we're called. All right. So for today's topic, we're going to talk about medicine and healthcare and the differences between America and Thailand. In the first half, it'll be a little bit shorter, I think. I think the second half is going to be a little bit longer. In the first half, I'll talk about the differences. And then in the second segment, I'll talk about whether those differences are good or bad. And sometimes it's not as obvious as it might seem. For example, healthcare costs are lower in Thailand. Of course, that's generally good, but does that maybe prevent us from getting the best quality of care here? Maybe it doesn't. I'll tell you my experience about that, whether I think it does or not. And so whether that's a negative, certainly a positive that it's cheaper here in Thailand, but is there a negative that comes along with that? So which one's better? And again, I think it's probably not as obvious as you might think. All right, so first, in our first part of the program here, we're actually just going to look at what those differences are. And we'll talk about them more in the second half as far as comparing good versus bad. So first of all, healthcare is much less expensive here in Thailand. Now, why is that? There's probably multiple reasons. I think the government helps subsidize it more here in Thailand than they do in America. Also, in America, there are a lot of sort of intermediate steps where people are trying to collect more money. It's also a very litigious society. That means people like to press lawsuits. So if a doctor does anything wrong, someone is going to sue them for millions and millions of dollars. And so they have to get this insurance, which is called malpractice insurance, which costs a lot of money. And so now the doctors have to charge a lot more money in order to get that money back that they're paying for that insurance. So the doctors charge a lot more. So everything just costs a lot more. Also, it's just a higher cost of living country just in general. because people make more money, and that's something we're also going to talk about in the second half. People make more money, so stuff costs more. Everything costs more. Food costs more as well. Now, relative to how much you make, it could actually be more expensive here in Thailand, possibly. Like some food certainly is. Like some food I've noticed is only maybe 10 or 20% cheaper here in Thailand than it is in the United States, but yet the salaries here are much, much, much lower than that. So relative to what you earn, it could be a lot more expensive. But basically, healthcare is much less expensive here. And again, there are many reasons. I just explained a few of them to you. Okay? Health insurance is also much less expensive here. Now, the reason for that is going to be quite simple, really. And that's just because the insurance is covering part or all, depending on your insurance, is covering part or all of those healthcare expenses. So obviously, since the healthcare expenses are lower, the insurance is going to be lower. So that one makes very simple sense, right? There's nothing tricky about that one. That's easy. Third thing is that pharmaceuticals are also much less expensive here in Thailand. Much less, dramatically less. And the reason for that is twofold. There are two reasons, and they are related. Number one is that the government caps the price of pharmaceuticals here in Thailand. Prices are government controlled for pharmaceuticals. Pharmaceuticals is like drugs when you go to the pharmacy and you have to buy some drugs. The prices are controlled. Now, a lot of these companies in the U.S., a lot of these companies come from the U.S. Not all of them. There's certainly a whole lot of drug-making companies that are in India, for example. But a lot of them come from the U.S. So there's also a lot in Germany, by the way. So there are certainly other countries other than the U.S. that are producing lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of pharmaceuticals. But the U.S. is one of the bigger ones. And there are a lot of countries that have these caps on pharmaceutical prices. And so what that means is that these companies that manufacture this, they can't make a lot of money in Thailand. They're obviously still making some, or they wouldn't even sell the stuff here. They wouldn't bother because they're not going to make any money. So they're obviously still making some money, but they don't make a lot. So what they do is they try to charge more in the countries where there is no cap on the price. And the United States is one of those countries. So pharmaceuticals cost a lot in America, a tremendous amount compared to Thailand. I'm talking about like between 10 and 100 times more expensive in America for drug prices. So that's another difference. Now, you may say, well, all of these sound like that Thailand would be better, right? The healthcare is less expensive, the insurance is less expensive, the pharmaceuticals are less expensive. Again, we'll talk about that in the second half. Some of these are not so obvious. And the fourth difference I have, and there are more than four differences. These are just some of the more basic, obvious ones that I've come up with. The fourth one is that Thailand tends to use more traditional medicines. For example, like a lot of herbs, a lot of herbal remedies. That's not to say that there is no herb market in the U.S. for medicinal purposes. There is a huge market for that with supplements and things like that, which are not considered actual medicine. So there's a huge market for it in the U.S. as well. But the U.S. but definitely as a culture, the U.S. is more geared toward kind of modern medicine rather than traditional medicine. Whereas in Thailand, traditional medicine is more common. And I find that throughout all of Asia, really. I've been to China many times. I've been to almost every other country in Southeast Asia. And traditional medicine is more common. And it's not just with herbs and things that you might take, things that you might eat, but it's also with like doing certain sorts of exercises like Tai Chi or getting a Thai massage or things like that for your health. So it's more than just like medicines that you might take. But that's primarily what I'm focusing on here, is that traditional medicine is more common in Thailand than it is in America. Now that one maybe isn't so obvious whether it's good or bad, so we'll talk about that in the second half. But that's another difference. So most of these differences seem like Thailand should be better. It may not be as much as you might think. And I'm not trying to say anything bad about Thailand and their health system either. I mean, even though there probably will be more negatives than you would expect based on my list of differences, I kind of still prefer the Thai system. And a lot of it is because of those cost differences. A lot of it's because of that. I've had to go to the hospital a few times here since I've lived here. More times than I would like to say. I recently had a broken wrist, if you watch our program here. And you were watching in the middle of 2025. I had my wrist here in a cast. I broke my wrist. Last year I broke my ankle. I've been to the hospital many times here. And I tend to prefer the Thai system. But there definitely are some negatives, and probably more than you might think based on this list of differences. This list of differences, 3 of them look like they favor the Thai system, and one of them, the one about traditional medicine, hard to say. Okay. So, and that last, the third and fourth one are really pretty important in terms of pros and cons. They add multiple things to our list of pros and cons. It can go different ways for multiple reasons. So we will get into that in the second part of our program. So let's go ahead and take a break right now. Welcome back, everyone. All right, so we're talking about medicine and healthcare and the differences between Thailand and the United States. And in the first part of our program, we talked about four different elements. 3 of them had to do with cost, really. Healthcare itself, the health insurance, the pharmaceuticals, all being cheaper in Thailand. And then the 4th element was that Thailand uses more traditional medicines than in the U.S. And I wanted to make clear, and I'll restate it again, that there's plenty of herbal remedies, traditional medicines, that sort of thing in the U.S. as well. Plenty of it. There's a lot of people that prefer that type of medicine. But just as a percentage of the population that would rely on that versus more modern medicine techniques, it's definitely, traditional medicine is definitely much more common here in Thailand. But again, I don't want to make it sound like it's not used at all in the U.S. Okay, so now I want to try to look at what system is better. So let's look at some pros and cons. Pros are good things, cons are bad things. If your English is not so good, that's what that means. Pros and cons. Pros are good, cons are bad. So we're going to look at the pros and cons. Now, as far as what you might think you're going to hear going into this, it depends kind of on your view of things. Since we're here in Thailand, many of you might think, oh, our system's great, because you're Thai. So it's our system. Our system's great. You might think Thailand should come out on top, especially the list I gave in the first part of our program. Cheaper, cheaper, cheaper. Everything's cheaper, costs less. On the other hand, you might think, well, America is kind of a rich, more modern country. They're going to have the latest and best stuff, so maybe theirs is going to be better. Kind of depends on your opinion. And there are going to be pros and cons to both systems. So let's look at what these are. And the way I'm going to list these is based on the Thai system. In other words, a pro means it's good in Thailand. A con, since that's a con for the Thai system, means it's going to be better in America. All right, so let's start out with the pros. Okay, first of all, a pro. Even though the healthcare at a hospital can get kind of expensive here in Thailand, depends what you're in there for, but if it's severe and you have to stay overnight, and the cost will really add up. It can get pretty expensive. Still, it is nothing compared to the costs in America. Let me give you an example. I had a minor operation in America. I had what most people would consider very good health insurance. I did not have to stay overnight at all in the hospital. I was in the hospital for only a few hours. That's it. Minor operation. And my bill that I got was over 5,000 US dollars. That is equal to over 150,000 Thai baht. 150,000 for a minor procedure. And that is how much I had to pay. The actual cost of the whole thing was over 20,000 US dollars. 20,000. That's 600,000 baht. And it's actually more than that. It's probably closer to 7 or 8 because it was over 20,000, and the exchange rate is a little bit more than 30. Even right now, with the Thai baht being strong and the U.S. dollar being weak, it's still about 32. So it's probably closer to 7 or 800,000 baht, just for a very minor procedure. Minor procedure. Didn't have to stay overnight. Nothing. So it's crazy expensive in the United States. Here in Thailand, very inexpensive comparatively. All right? And as I mentioned in the first part, the health insurance is also cheaper. And I already explained why. But I'll give you an example again here. For my health insurance, when I was in America, I was paying about 1,000 US dollars per month. That's about 30,000 baht per month for my health insurance. And that did not even cover everything. I just mentioned to you about the operation where I had to then pay 150,000 baht for the operation after my insurance coverage. And the insurance comes with, and that would be called a copay, where I have to pay part of it. And there's also something called a deductible on there, where for the first, I don't even remember what it was. I think it's about $2,000, which is about 60,000 baht. For the first 60,000 baht of health care that I need, I have to pay for that entirely myself before my insurance starts to kick in. So I'm paying 30,000 baht a month. I have to still pay a big chunk of my health care, and I have to pay 100% of my health care until I get to a certain limit. It's crazy. That is crazy expensive for health insurance in the United States. Much cheaper here in Thailand. Coverage also tends to be a little bit better here in Thailand. I don't know what all the coverage is for everyone. I don't know. I can just tell you that my coverage that I get through working here at the university, my coverage is very good. Okay. Pharmaceuticals are also much less expensive here. I also explained why that is in the first half. But once again, I'll give you another example. I recently was taking some medicine. I had to take it for like almost 2 weeks. I think it was closer to like 10 days or something like that. 10 or 11 days, something like that. I believe it was about 3 pills a day. So there was, I think it was more than 10 days because I think it was more than 30 pills. I think it was closer to 50. It was between 30 and 50 pills, something like that. It cost me 150 baht. In the U.S., that would cost at least $100, which is 3,000 baht. So that's going to be 20 times the price, and that's at a minimum, at least. If you're getting the type of medicine I was taking, and you needed 30 to 50 doses of it, which is quite a lot, yeah, that's going to cost you at least $100 in the US, at least. It could cost you even more than that. So that's 3,000 baht. And again, I'm being generous with these numbers towards the US because, again, the exchange rate's actually around 32, so that would be 3,200 baht. And since it only cost me 150 baht, that means it's 3,000. It's more than 3,000 baht more than what I had to pay here. So again, pharmaceuticals, much cheaper here. Pharmaceuticals are also much more convenient here. Here's something you probably don't know about the US. But for most drugs, this isn't true of all of them, like paracetamol, things like that. It's not true of that. Anything you can get, for example, in CVS, like you can get paracetamol at CVS. You can get that in America easily as well. But all the other stuff that you have to go to a pharmacy to get, in America, you need to get a doctor's certificate. We call it a prescription in order to be able to buy that. That adds on to the expenses even more because you have to have a doctor's visit. You have to go to the doctor and pay for your doctor's visit because you have to get the note from your doctor in order to go to the pharmacy. So it's not just adding more expenses, but it's also a lot less convenient. It takes you all that time, and you're sick, right? You want the medicine. You're sick. You want medicine. It takes you all that time because you have to go to the doctor, and then you then you can go to the pharmacy. You hope the doctor prescribes what you need. So you have to go through that whole process. It's so much more convenient here in Thailand. You just walk into the pharmacy, you tell them what you need, and they give it to you. Sometimes they might ask you some questions. They want to make sure you're getting the right thing for what you need and you're not asking for something you don't need or whatever. So sometimes they'll ask some questions, but generally speaking, you just walk into the pharmacy, you say you need this, and they give it to you. It's really easy. Very convenient. Okay, and then the last pro I have here is that traditional medicine, which is more popular here in Thailand, is healthier in some ways. It kind of works with the body, whereas some of these chemical medicines are not very good for the liver. Most of them don't damage the liver, and the liver is I don't know if you know this, but the liver is like the one organ in the body that actually can grow back. I should say it's the one internal organ. Your skin is considered an organ. Obviously, your skin can grow back. When you get a cut, it heals up. You can't grow big patches of skin back. They have to do something called a skin graft if you have a problem like that. But generally, a little bit of skin at least can grow back. But it's the only internal organ that can actually grow back and repair itself. Like your brain can't do that. Your lungs can't grow back. The liver is the only one that can do that. So the modern medicines aren't terrible. They stress your liver a little bit. They're probably not going to damage your liver unless you already had some other liver problems to go along with that. It's not that big of a deal. Still. And there actually are some herbal things that can also damage your liver as well. But generally speaking, your herbal medicines are going to be more gentle on your body. Your body is going to handle them more easily. So they're just better for you in that regard. Okay, so those are the pros for the Thai system. Now some of the negatives. First one is that I have been to multiple hospitals here. I've had to go to 2 different hospitals myself, and I have visited a student at another hospital as well. So I've been to 3 different hospitals at least. There could be more than that. I'm trying to think. I'm not sure. At least 3. And generally speaking here, the hospital facilities are not as good as they are in the United States. That's one thing I mentioned that might be possible. Maybe. I said we'd talk about it. That might be possible when we mentioned that healthcare is less expensive here. It might be less expensive because we have a saying in the West that you get what you pay for. You're paying less, you're going to get less. So the facilities here are worse. So I would be concerned if I had a major health problem. I would probably be a little bit concerned about getting my treatment here. I would probably have no choice. Your health insurance doesn't carry outside the country, so I have no health insurance in the United States anymore, and the costs there are so unbelievably expensive, I couldn't do it. So I'd probably have no choice but to do it here, but I'd be a little bit worried if I needed major health care here. For normal, routine stuff or small things like when I broke my wrist or broke my ankle, big deal. That's all fine. But the facilities are a little worse here. They are a little worse here in Thailand. All right, the second con is that people here in Thailand make a lot less money than most people in America do. And so how much really how much cheaper is the healthcare here? You have to do it relative to how much people earn. Like the example I gave about food. I buy this food at the grocery store, and it's about 10 or 20% less than it is in the U.S., but my salary is about 1/5. It's about 80% less than what it was in the U.S. So relative to my salary, the cost of that certain food item is actually more, not less. So is it really cheaper here? Now, honestly, I would have to tell you that I still do think it's cheaper here in Thailand. So I do still think that is a plus. As I told you, things like the example with the pharmaceuticals, they're like 20 times more expensive in the U.S. People generally are not making 20 times more in the U.S. than most Thai people are making. They might make even 10 times as much. That's not far-fetched. I make 1/10 what I made there. I said about 80% less. It's actually closer to 90%, but I had a really good job in the U.S., so it's closer to 90% less. So yeah, it could be as much as 10 times. But these costs for healthcare in the U.S. are more than 10 times more. So I still think the Thai system is better on cost. But you do have to keep this in mind, the fact that Thai people make a lot less. That does kind of make up a lot of that difference there. And so, how much cheaper is the Thai healthcare system? It's debatable. The third negative is that the pharmaceuticals can be more dangerous here. Why? Because they don't have the same controls. And what I mean is the very same thing that was a positive for Thailand about the convenience of getting some medicines, there's a reason they require a prescription for them in America. They can be dangerous if you take them in the wrong dose. You combine two different medicines that you're not supposed to take together. They can be dangerous. Here in Thailand, there's absolutely no control for that. Sure, if you go to a pharmacy and ask them for two different things and they will cause a problem together, the pharmacist will probably know that and will tell you and will not sell you both of those things. But there's nothing stopping you from going from one pharmacy for one of those things and going to a second pharmacy for the other one. You could still get around that if you thought to yourself that, oh, my body's strong enough, I'm not worried about that. And you could get away with it. That's dangerous. You basically can't do that in the U.S. I mean, you still sort of could if you went to two different doctors and but then you need two different doctors as well as two different pharmacies, and that's two different doctor visits. That would get crazy to try to get two different prescriptions that you shouldn't be taking together. That's much easier, much more likely to happen here in Thailand. So pharmaceuticals can be dangerous. You have to have a much higher level of personal responsibility when you're taking medicine here in Thailand. And the last one is kind of the opposite side to the herbal remedies being more healthy, and that is that they're less effective. Most herbal remedies are not as effective. Now, I'm not saying they're not effective at all. Things like ginger and garlic have known properties in them which help with certain medical conditions. But a lot of times people will hear that, oh, well, this herb is good for this. And so then and once people hear that, then these companies will try to promote that and make a supplement out of it and sell this as some herbal remedy. The problem is you need to eat the element in there that is doing that good thing for your health is in such small quantities that you would need to eat buckets and buckets of that herb to really have that effect. And most people don't realize that. They don't understand like the amounts that are actually in the herbs or in the supplements or that they're taking or whatever. And so they think, oh, great, I'll solve this problem using this herbal remedy. So half of these herbal remedies just don't even work. And because they're not actual medicine, they're not subject to the same price caps as the medicine. So here in Thailand, and this is not so true in America, although supplements can be very expensive in America, here in Thailand, those type of herbal remedies are actually usually more expensive than modern medicine. Sometimes a lot more expensive. Now in America, well, they're both expensive really, but probably the modern medicine is usually a little more expensive than supplements. So you're paying more for something that may not work at all or doesn't work as well. Now, again, I'm not knocking on traditional medicine. As I said, there are certainly some things that are known to work. So there is certainly some traditional medicine, some herbal remedies that, absolutely do work. When I have a cold, and I had one recently, believe me, I love nothing more than having a ginger honey tea. Feels really good for your throat. And ginger does have some antibacterial properties. So it might be helping to kill some of the bad stuff that's in your throat. I think that's really the warmth that just makes it feel good. But it might actually be helping as well. It might be doing some good. So some herbal remedies actually do work. So again, I'm not knocking them. I'm just saying that generally they're going to be a little bit less effective than modern medicine. And they're more expensive here in Thailand, which is not true in America. So that's another negative about the Thai system. Okay, so wrapping that all up, which one is better overall? You know what? I'm not going to sit here and say one is better than the other. This one's better. It's probably going to depend on you. For example, I, at least right now, hopefully for the future, don't have any major medical issue. So for me, the cheaper costs are better. Because all I need is minor things here or there. A little medicine here, a little medicine there. Go get my arm wrapped up after I broke my ankle, after I broke my wrist. Go get my ankle wrapped up after I broke my ankle, things like that. All simple stuff. So the cheaper costs are more important to me. Because I go frequently, but for minor things. So again, cheaper costs are most important. So for me, the Thai system is better. But for some people who maybe have a major medical condition, some disease or something, the American system may be better. So really, it depends on you. For me, I prefer the system we have here in Thailand because the cost matters a lot. And for me, it's really, and I also have very good insurance through my university. I basically pay nothing. Sometimes I have to wait longer than other people because I have to go through the Social Security section, but I basically pay nothing when I go to the hospital. Sometimes there are extra things that they make you pay for, like when I broke my ankle, the crutches. I have to pay for the crutches, but mostly it's entirely free. So again, I prefer the Thai system. So those are some of the differences and some of the pros and cons between healthcare and medicine between the United States and Thailand. And like I said, I'm not going to say one's better than the other. For me, I prefer the Thai system. For some people, they might be better off with the American system. All right, so that's it. Thank you for joining us for today's program of An American in Thailand. Let me reach out to any young people out there who are planning on going to university anytime soon. Why not consider us here at Ratchamakan University of Technology, Peranakan? We have really nice programs here, so consider us. All right, please stay with us and tune back in next week for another interesting episode. Also, please don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Thank you.